my name is Amelia Nagoski, and today I'm talking about self-compassion. Don't click away. It's not as goofy and cheesy as it sounds. It's like a real thing with a lot of research and science behind it. I made a couple of mini videos in preparation for this because I would not have believed this video before I wrote the book, really, because I had to learn what people meant when they said part of your mind. The foundation of my inability to get it was alexithymia. I didn't have the capacity to be aware of my own internal experience, so I wasn't aware that there were like different voices in my head, different messages coming from different parts of my sensory system. Emily just took for granted that everybody understood. You have that self-critical voice, And I had never heard any kind of voice, but that turns out alexithymia, and that puts me in the extreme minority, especially of women. Alexithymia is more common in men. And so for a woman not to be aware of like a self-critical voice in her head, super, super rare. So if you're another one of those people and you need some when that convince me, explain to me what it means to have a part of your mind and what it actually means if you turn toward a part of yourself. Who am I talking to when I do that? There's a video for that. In the book, we talk about self-compassion as turning toward the madwoman in the attic. And the madwoman in the attic is a thing I really understand because it's a literary trope that originated with Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. In Jane Eyre, the character of Jane Eyre is a governess living in the house of Mr. Rochester. And Mr. Rochester has a madwoman living in his attic. And don't we all? Metaphorically. Inside your mind, you have different processes that are taking care of different things. There's processes managing your digestion and managing your circulatory system and your respiratory system. And there's a part of your mind that's dealing with the issue that the world expects you to do and be things that you are not, and that you are not the things that the world expects you to do and be. And so there is this gap between those two things, a chasm between those two things, a profound abyss between those two things. Early in your life, you develop this capacity, this system to manage the difference between who you are and who the world expects you to be. I'm going to refer to her as she because I'm calling her a madwoman. Yes, I recognize that madwoman might be construed as ableist language. I figure of all people to talk about, to use the word mad and to just casually banter around words that are about mental illness. I'm allowed. It's my word. I reclaim it. Madwoman. Crazy lady. I'm reclaiming that. You're not allowed to call me that, but I'm allowed to call me that, and I'm allowed to call the parts of my brain that. The madwoman has to blame either the world for having really crazy expectations that are just unreasonable, or you for being insufficient, for being a failure. And she's a madwoman because that's an impossible job. If you were stuck with an impossible job, it would slowly drive you out of contact with reality also. And also, this madwoman, this system in your brain that's dealing with this chasm, started when you were young. When Amy Poehler talks about it, she talks about it happening round about middle school age, maybe 11, 12, the early puberty. Emily remembers it back into her 7 and 8-year-old times, and I definitely have a sense of what I have now identified as being my madwoman. I have felt since I was 3 or 4. The madwoman wants to protect you. Her job is to make sure that you conform to these expectations, because belonging to a group, belonging to the tribe, being accepted and cared for by others is a matter of life or death. As far as your primitive brain is concerned, belonging to the herd, fitting in, is a matter of survival. So the madwoman screams, "Don't cross the street without looking. Don't go out there. No, 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 no. Stop. There's traffic." She's trying to protect you is what I'm saying. So that self-critical voice is screaming and freaking out. And it seems like, ugh, stop, shut up. I don't need you. So there is a lot of advice that's ignore that voice because it's freaking out and you don't need that in your life. You don't need that negativity. Dismiss it, ignore it, pretend it's not there. And that seems like good advice. It's not evidence-based advice, but it seems like great advice. Because what if it was an actual person who was yelling at you like that? You'd be like, oh, I don't need you in my life. But it turns out that's not a person who you can just dismiss from your life. It's a part of your mind who lives in your mind, and you can't treat it the same way. Everything you do to the Madwoman, you are doing to yourself. And to don't ignore yourself. Listen to yourself. You are wise and powerful, and you know important things, so listen to yourself. The science here comes from Kristen Neff, who is the main person you think of when you think of self-compassion research. So imagine you're this Madwoman trying to protect. Stop it, don't go out there, it's dangerous. And there's this person who you're trying to protect, and they're like, ugh, I'm gonna ignore you, I don't need you, you're wrong, shut up, go away. How do you feel now? You are just even more, you just need to clutch even more. And what that research says is instead of just shutting that thing up, instead turn toward it with kindness and compassion and be like, hey, I hear you have a message for me. You don't have to yell. I'm here. I'm listening. And then imagine this is you again. You are the freaking out. Oh my God, I'm trying to protect you. Don't cross the street. There's cars coming. And then this person you're trying to protect has turned toward you. And you're like, oh God, you're listening. Here, I'm going to tell you all the things I'm afraid of. Here's all the things that could happen to you. You blah, blah, here's the... And imagine the person you're trying to do this with listens patiently, kindly, calmly, and soothingly, and says, I hear what you're trying to say, and I am so grateful that you're trying to protect me. And now the Madwoman's like, you appreciate what I'm trying to do? It feels so great. Because remember, when you're talking to a part of yourself, you are talking to yourself. And if this is making you go, what? The link to the parts of your mind video is in the description. So now the Madwoman is melting and calming because she feels heard and known, and she can feel confident that you know what she's trying to tell you and what she's trying to protect you from. And then to go another step further and ask the Madwoman, why are you afraid of this? And she will have a lot of fear and a lot of pain and a lot of sadness usually. Over and over, people identify their Madwomen as a character who seems mean on the surface, but underneath is just really fragile, and her meanness, her edge, her criticism comes from fear, from her own experiences of pain. Well, here's the part that I had a lot of trouble with of how to identify your Madwoman. Emily was like, just sit for a minute and like, remember a time when you felt like you had failed, like there was a gap between who you are and who the world expected you to be. And she uses an example of one weekend when she had on her calendar, 10 a.m. she was going to be at this conference. And Saturday at 10 a.m. she gets a phone call. Emily, we're upstairs. You ready to meet? And she was not upstairs. She was in her house, in her pajamas, with her car buried under a foot of snow. So she was not making this meeting. So, she did all of the responsible adult things you got to do in that instance of sending all the emails and apologizing and blah, blah, blah. But then she's overwhelmed with this feeling of failure and just that is the Madwoman. And for her, she can personify her Madwoman. She pictures, when that happens, she pictures Te Kā from Moana. And she can turn toward this character and actually ask, what do you have to tell me? Why do you need me to know this? What are you afraid will happen? Etc., etc. And over again, the Madwoman is afraid that, we'll die alone. No one will love us. People will see that we're imposters and they won't, want to be around us anymore. And Emily can soothe that character and say, no, there are people in my life who will always love me no matter what. And doesn't that feel amazing to be able to say to a part of yourself? Because you're saying it to yourself. So maybe you, like most people, can sit down and just imagine a time when you felt that self-critical voice, and an image will pop into your head of a person, of the mean girl, or of, the boss bitch, or Te Kā from Moana. And then you'll be able to talk to her. Great. But if you're one of the 50% of people with autism who also have alexithymia, maybe you can't do that. And maybe you're going to need to wait for a moment when that feeling comes and then go, oh, that's what that is, because that's how it happened for me. my Madwoman is really different from Emily's, as you may expect. My Madwoman, I remember from so early in my life, is 3 things at once. It's an image I get, just a flash of a image that I've had in dreams all my life, but I also get a flash of it in moments when I've failed, of a pale, like ivory, yellowish, off-white cream, the kind of like neutral color you might paint a room in the 70s. Because what I'm saying is it was the paint color of my bedroom when I was a toddler. And in front of that plain, neutral, pale tan background are 2 little balls. One ball of like dust that's big and kind of monstrous and looming over another one that's very, very little. So I get this image of this picture. And within this picture, there's also a sensation of looming and dominance by the big ball and a kind of tugging magnetic pull sensation. So there's this physical dynamic that I perceive. And also, I thought it was just that for a long time. But also, it turns out I started to recognize that when I feel that happening as a thing that's outside me, as a thing that I'm seeing, I also get the sensation of the kind of Alfred Hitchcock dolly zoom, where you're zooming in a picture with the lens, you're zooming in to make whatever's in the center of the frame bigger. At the meantime, you're pulling out the actual camera, like backing up and pulling out the dolly so that what's in the frame gets bigger and bigger. So you have this face staying the same size while everything around it expands, and it's this vertiginous confusion of dread or guilt or sudden realization. And it feels disorienting and it looks disorienting in the movies. That's what I feel like. Did I recognize this feeling as being part of the whole Madwoman thing? Did I even recognize I was having this feeling until I was in my late 30s or maybe even early 40s? Nope. And then one day, after we had written the book, I failed in a way that really was my fault. I had failed to live up to perfectly reasonable expectations. So what happens in that instance is the Madwoman, theoretically, turns toward me and starts going, no, you're a failure. You will never be loved. You will never be blah, 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 blah. That's what should have been happening in that moment if I'd been able to recognize a Madwoman. And what I felt instead was that vertiginous dolly zoom sensation. And I saw that flash. I saw that. The 2 dust balls lingering over each other, fighting over each other. When I recognized that, I was like, oh, that's my Madwoman. I do have a song, but it's but I'm not going to perform it live because I've actually already recorded it for a recorded presentation that Emily did. So it's a lot more polished. I did record it while I was still recovering from COVID last summer, so my voice is fragile. It's not my best singing, but it is very appropriate for the song. And then Emily took this audio recording and she made a little video, unbeknownst to me. It's called The Madwoman Lullaby. And in it, I sing to my Madwoman. And the lyrics start, you're the one inside my head who sees the painful gap between the world and me. You're the Madwoman and I take you by the hand. I'll put the lyrics in the description. But here it is, Emily's music video for The Madwoman Lullaby. The one inside my head who sees the painful gap between the world and me. You're the mad woman, and I take you by the hand. I'm here with you in that abyss. You warn me when something's amiss. Is it the world or me? Whose fault could it be? This time you decide it's me. You want to scream till I agree. I look in your eyes and see all of the lies they fed to us when we were small, when we had no defense at all. My best self takes over, gives the Madwoman closure, just like the times when we were small, when we had no defense at all. We're back again in the abyss. You warn me when something's amiss. Is it the world or me? Whose fault could it be? You choose this time to blame the world. I watch the rage inside you swirl. I look in your eyes and stay while you cry, just like the times when we were small, when we had no defense at all. My best self takes over, gives the Madwoman closure, just like the times when we were small,